After 13 hours in the ICU, exhaustion wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a weight. It sat on my shoulders, in my hips, behind my eyes. Malik had been hooked to machines all day, the steady beeping drilling into my skull until it felt like it was sensing with my pulse. I'd spent most of that time in a stiff vinyl chair, one leg tucked under me, the other numb, pretending the lukewarm coffee in my hand counted as food. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and burnt toast from the cafeteria downstairs. Nurses moved with that quiet urgency you only see when something really mattered. They spoke in low voices, careful not to wake the kids, careful not to scare the parents. Every update was short. Stable, no change. Words that were supposed to calm me but somehow never did. By the time I finally left Malik's room, my body felt hollowed out. Like I'd given everything I had just sitting there, watching his chest rise and fall, praying it would keep doing that on its own someday. The elevator ride down felt longer than the entire day. I leaned against the wall, eyes closed, counting floors like it might keep me upright. Outside, the cold Newark air slapped me awake. I hadn't realized it was night already. My phone buzzed with missed calls I didn't have the energy to check. All I could think about was getting home, peeling off my coat, and sitting somewhere, anywhere, that didn't smell like fear. I walked to my car slowly, every step heavy, my mind still back in that icky room, counting breaths that weren't mine. I got home just after midnight, my body running on hospital coffee and fear. 13 hours in the ICU will hollow you out in ways sleep never fixes. The hallway of my building looked the same as always. Dim lights, chipped paint, that faint smell of old heat and dust. But something felt off before I even reached my door. That's when I saw it. A bright pink notice, taped crookedly at eye level, fluttering slightly in the draft like it couldn't wait to be seen. My hand froze on my keys. I already knew in my bones that nothing good ever comes on neon paper after midnight. I peeled it off slowly, the tape making that soft ripping sound that feels louder when you're exhausted. The first line punched me right in the chest. Effective immediately. Rent is increasing to $5,900. Pay in full or vacate by 10:00 a.m. tomorrow. No greeting. No explanation. No mercy. I read it twice, then a third time, like the numbers might rearrange themselves if I stared hard enough. 10 a.m. Tomorrow. As if people just pack up their lives overnight. As if my son wasn't hooked up to machines 3 miles away, fighting to breathe. At the bottom was the signature. Clean. Confident. Familiar. My sister's name. I unlocked the door and stepped into the cold apartment. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones. I sat down on the couch without taking my coat off, still holding the notice. Pink paper against shaking hands. That was the moment it stopped being about rent. That was the moment I realized how disposable she thought I was. The signature at the bottom stopped me cold. Seraphine Nash. Managing Partner, Nash Properties, LLC, Ayla. My sister. I stared at her name the way you stare at a stranger who happens to be wearing a familiar face. Same last name? Same blood. But the ink felt sharp, impersonal, like it had been pressed down without hesitation, without memory. No love. No explanation. Just a corporate title slapped under her name, as if that somehow erased the fact that she'd shared a bedroom with me once, that she knew my son's birthday by heart. Managing Partner. That was new. At least, new to me. I sank onto the edge of the couch, the notice trembling slightly in my hand. Seraphine hadn't even tried to soften it. No call. No warning. Just legal language, and a deadline that felt crueler because it was so precise. 10 a.m. Tomorrow. Like my life could be boxed up between sunrise and coffee. I could hear her voice in my head, cool, clipped, confident. This isn't personal. It's business. She loved that line. Said it the way other people said, "I'm sorry." Like it excused everything. What hurt wasn't the money. It was the way she'd rewritten our relationship without telling me. Somewhere along the way I stopped being her sister and became a line item. A tenant. A problem to manage. I folded the paper carefully, like if I treated it gently enough, it might stop cutting. But it didn't. Because beneath that signature wasn't just authority. It was betrayal, typed in bold. I called Seraphine from the edge of Malik's hospital bed, my phone pressed so tight to my ear it hurt. The ICU was dim, all blue light and blinking monitors, the kind of room where time stretches and breath feels borrowed. Malik's chest rose and fell in shallow mechanical rhythms, a ventilator doing work his body couldn't. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I was running on coffee and fear. The call rang once. Twice. Then, voicemail. I hung up and texted instead, my thumbs shaking. Seraphine, please. Malik is in the ICU. I just got the rent notice. I can't deal with this right now. Can we talk? I stared at the screen like it might soften if I stared hard enough. Around me, a nurse adjusted tubing. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rattled. Life kept moving, indifferent. 30 minutes passed. Then, an hour. Her reply finally came just after midnight, lighting up my phone in that harsh white glow. This isn't personal. Business is business. You've been paying below market for years. That was it. No question about Malik. No, is he okay? No, do you need help? Just clipped sentences, polished and cold, like something copied from a lease agreement. I read it twice, then a third time, hoping I'd missed a word that sounded like my sister. Someone who grew up sharing a bathroom with me. Someone who once held my hair back when I was sick. Instead, all I felt was the floor drop out of my chest. I looked at Malik, at the tape on his small arm, the wires tracing his skin, and something in me went very still. Not rage. Not panic. Clarity. She'd made her choice. And in that moment, sitting under fluorescent lights, with my son fighting to breathe, I realized I was done begging anyone, family or not, to remember I mattered. Mrs. Bellman knocked just as the kettle began to scream on the stove. A soft, careful knock, like she was afraid of bothering me. When I opened the door, she stood there in her quilted housecoat, gray hair pinned back, holding a plastic container wrapped in a dish towel. Chicken soup. The kind that smells like patience. I saw the notice, she said gently, nodding toward the pink paper still clenched in my hand. Thought you might need something warm. I thanked her and stepped aside, but she didn't move. Her eyes lingered on the paper, and something in her face shifted. Recognition, not surprise. She did that to me last fall, Mrs. Bellman said. Same way, overnight, no warning, just business. She gave a thin, humorless smile. That's what she told me too. My stomach dropped. She raised your rent too? 30%, she said, like she was reciting a weather report. Told me I could find somewhere else if I didn't like it. At my age, she laughed once, sharp and dry. On a fixed pension. She reached out and patted my arm, her hand warm and steady. You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. And neither did your boy. She's done this before. The hallway felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were leaning in, listening. All this time I'd thought it was personal. Family. Something between sisters. But it wasn't. It was a pattern. Mrs. Bellman pressed the soup into my hands. Eat when you can, she said. And don't let her make you feel small. That's her trick. After she left, I closed the door and stood there for a long moment, holding the container against my chest. The soup was still warm. The truth was warmer, and heavier. Seraphine hadn't just come for me. She'd been circling all of us. I went back to the hospital just before dawn, that gray hour when the lights feel too bright, and everyone moves like daisies underwater. Malik was still sedated, machines breathing in careful rhythms beside him. I pulled a vinyl chair close, set my bag at my feet, and finally let the quiet catch up to me. Out of habit more than hope, I opened my laptop. The Wi-Fi crawled. My inbox was a mess of unread threads and automated notices. Then I searched my files, something I'd saved years ago and never opened again because grief has a way of filing things where you can't reach them. The PDF loaded slowly, one page at a time, like it knew it mattered. Deed transfer. Unit 3B.1. Nash Building. My name stared back at me in bold legal font. Not beneficiary. Not pending. Owner. Sole owner. Dated and notarized weeks before my father's surgery. Quietly filed. Cleaned Ayla. Final. I felt it before I understood it. A pressure behind my eyes, a hum in my chest. I scrolled again, slower. The notary seal caught the fluorescent light. The address was right. The signatures were right. Mine. His. Real. I closed the laptop and listened to the monitor's beep, steady and patient. For years, I'd let myself believe I was borrowing space, renting peace, asking permission. All that time, I'd been standing on something that was already mine. I reached into my bag and touched the black envelope I'd kept for emergencies, the one I'd prayed I'd never need. The weight of it felt different now. Not fear, not rage. Resolve. I leaned over Malik and brushed a curl from his forehead. I've got this, I whispered. Not to promise bravery. To state a fact. Outside the window, the sky was turning blue. I didn't plan the confrontation the way people imagine. No dramatic music, no mirror pep talk. It happened at 3 in the morning, under the IQ's buzzing lights, while my son slept with a tube helping him breathe. That's when I reached into my bag and felt the black envelope again. Heavy. Unforgiving. Waiting. Inside it were papers I'd avoided for years. A notarized deed. Filing records. Dates, stamps, signatures that didn't lie even when people did. Proof that I wasn't just a tenant begging for mercy, I was the owner she'd been pretending didn't exist. I slid the envelope back into my bag and zipped it shut with a finality that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. By morning, Newark felt sharper. Glacier. I walked past my expired parking meter and didn't care. Let them ticket me. Fear had gotten too expensive. When I stepped into Serafini's office tower, polished marble, soft piano music, the smell of money, I felt out of place for half a second. Then I remembered every diaper I changed for her, every night I sat with our father while she chased titles. Her assistant tried to block me. I told him to move. He didn't. I mentioned deeds and filing cabinets and watched his confidence leak out of him. When I finally sat across from my sister, she didn't ask about my son. She talked rent, markets, business. I let her finish. Then I placed the black envelope on her desk, right between her manicured hands, like something alive. Before you say another word, I told her, you should read this. And for the first time in years, she went quiet. I stepped into Seraphine's office building like I didn't belong there, because according to them I didn't. Polished marble floors, glass walls that reflected a version of myself I barely recognized. Tired eyes, coat still smelling like hospital disinfectant, hands clenched tighter than I realized. Soft piano music floated overhead, the kind meant to calm people who had never sat beside an ICU bed. The receptionist barely looked up. I gave my name. She frowned, tapped her keyboard, then asked if I had an appointment. No, I said. I'm her sister. That word didn't land the way it should have. Before I could say more, a man stepped into my path, Gregory. Navy blazer, perfect hair, smile sharpened into something rehearsed. He blocked me with a politeness that felt like a door slamming quietly shut. Nash, he said, dragging my last name like it was a file he didn't want to open. All meetings are by appointment only. I'm not here for a meeting, I replied. I'm here for my sister. He gave a small, dry chuckle. Not in this office, you're not. There it was. Clean wan. Bang mill. Cruel. In that moment, I wasn't the woman who helped raise her. I wasn't the sister who showed up when things fell apart. I was just another inconvenience standing on expensive tile. I looked past him, straight at the frosted glass door with her name etched in steel. Tell her I'm here, I said calmly. Or I start asking questions about what's buried in the filing cabinet marked Dee Dee. His smile cracked. Just slightly. 5 minutes later, he stepped aside. And I walked in like I belonged. Because I always had. I reached into my bag and took out the black envelope. It landed on her desk with a soft, deliberate thud, the kind of sound that makes a room go quiet. Seraphine finally looked up at me then. Really looked, like she was trying to figure out what version of me had just walked into her office. Before you throw around another lease clause, I said, keeping my voice steady, you should read what's in there. She hesitated. That was new. Seraphine didn't hesitate. She slid the papers out anyway, her manicured nails tapping once against the desk. I watched her eyes move, fast at first, then slower. The color drained from her face when she hit the notary seal. That's impossible, she said. It's the deed, I replied. Fully notarized, filed, dated before Dad went into surgery. I leaned back in the chair. I'm the legal owner, not pending, not partial, all of it. She flipped to the next pages, her jaw tightening. LLC, filing. Property management, document. The shell she'd been hiding behind for years. I've been managing this building, she snapped. I paid the taxes, I handled maintenance. You handled money, I said. You didn't have the authority. I slid another document forward. You filed under a trust you didn't legally control. You never disclosed it to me, or the tenants. The office felt smaller then, like the walls had leaned in. Outside the glass, downtown traffic hummed. Ubers, sirens. A city doing what cities do. Inside, my sister stared at the proof she never thought I'd use. I didn't want it to come to this, I said quietly. But you forced my hand. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking for space. I was claiming it. Seraphine didn't explode. That would have been easier. Instead, she leaned back in her leather chair, crossed her arms, and gave me that look, the one that said I was small, emotional, inconvenient. You've always been soft, Adelis, she said. You lead with feelings. That's why you never get anywhere. Her voice was calm, polished, like she was delivering a TED Talk instead of cutting her own sister open. I could hear the faint hum of traffic from Market Street below, the click of her designer pen against the desk. She was waiting for me to crack. I didn't. I leaned forward instead. Slowly. Deliberately. Soft? I said. You taped an eviction notice to my door while my son was on a ventilator. That got her attention. Just a flicker. A tightening around the eyes. You raised my rent to almost $6,000, I continued, my voice steady now, and gave me until morning to get out. Malik was sedated. Tubes in his chest. Machines breathing for him. She opened her mouth, probably to say business is business again, but I didn't let her. You weren't just trying to scare me, I said. You were ready to put your nephew on the street before he could breathe on his own. The room went quiet. No keyboard clicks. No pen tapping. For the first time since I walked in, she didn't have a line ready. I stood up, my hands shaking just enough that I noticed, but not enough to stop me. You can call me weak all you want, I said. But don't pretend this was just paperwork. You crossed a line you don't get to uncross. She looked away. And in that silence, I knew. She understood exactly what she'd done. I didn't storm out. I didn't threaten. I didn't send a single dramatic email. That's what she expected. Instead, I did something quieter, and far more dangerous to someone like my sister. I opened my laptop at the hospital cafeteria, the kind with flickering lights and burnt coffee that tastes like cardboard, and I filled out a city code enforcement request. No name attached. No accusations. Just facts. I listed the things I'd lived with for years and learned to ignore. The radiator that claimed all night but barely heated the room. The hallway lights that blinked like they were deciding whether to stay alive. The east stairwell railing that wobbled if you leaned too hard. I described the basement smell, wet drywall and old rot. The kind that sticks in your coat. I uploaded photos I'd taken on my phone months ago, back when I still thought being patient would earn me grace. I hit submit and felt nothing at first. No rush. No fear. Just a strange calm, like finally setting something heavy down. By the time I closed my laptop, Malik was still asleep upstairs, machines humming steadily, and I realized that for the first time in days, my hands weren't shaking. I hadn't broken any rules. I hadn't raised my voice. I'd simply asked the city to look. That was the point. People like my sister thrived in noise, arguments, leverage, panic. But inspections, paper trails, clipboards and timestamps, that was a language she didn't control. When I walked back into the ICU, I leaned over Malik's bed and brushed my thumb across his knuckles. "Mama's got it," I whispered. More to myself than him. I wasn't fighting dirty. I was fighting correctly. They showed up just after sunrise, 2 city inspectors in navy jackets, with the Newark seal stitched over the chest. No sirens, no drama. Just clipboards, tablets, and that quiet professional look people get when they already know they're about to find problems. "Miss Nash?" the older man asked. His voice was calm, tired. The kind that's seen too many buildings like this. I stepped aside and let them in. They started with the hallway. One light flickered like it was hanging on out of spite. The woman tapped her tablet. "That's a violation." She didn't even look surprised. The stair rail wobbled when the man tested it. He frowned, tightened his grip, tested it again. "Loose bolts. That's not safe." We moved slowly, step by step. Cracked tiles. Exposed wiring behind a warped panel. A fire door that didn't close all the way. Every few feet, another note. Another photo. The sound of it, the tap of fingers on glass, the scratch of a pen, felt louder than it should. Then we went down to the basement. The air hit first. Damp. Sourdough. Like wet cardboard and old metal. Black stains crawled up the wall behind the boiler, and the woman actually paused. "This isn't age," she said quietly. "This is neglect." The man shined his flashlight along the ceiling, then sighed. "We're going to have to recommend shutting down the east stairwell until repairs are made. It's a liability." I nodded. My hands were steady, even though my chest wasn't. As they finished, neighbors peeked through cracked doors. No one said much. But the silence felt different, like something had finally been acknowledged out loud. For the first time in a long while, the building wasn't just decaying quietly. It was being seen. She came at me fast, heels striking the lobby floor like gunshot. Seraphine didn't even bother lowering her voice. Her eyes were sharp, wild, with the kind of fury that comes when control starts slipping. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she snapped, pointing at the inspectors like they were props I'd staged just to humiliate her. "You've lost your mind. After everything I've done for this building, after everything I've done for you." I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there, hands loose at my sides, feeling the weight of the last few weeks settle into something solid inside my chest. The inspectors paused, pretending not to listen. Everyone was listening. "You're filing complaints like some stranger off the street," she hissed. "Trying to destroy me. You always had a problem knowing your place." That word, place, used to hit me like a bruise. This time, it didn't. "You raised my rent to nearly $6,000 while my son was on a ventilator," I said, evenly. "You did it with no notice, no heat upgrades and mold in the basement. You called it business." Her mouth tightened. "That's how the world works." I nodded once. "Exactly. And I'm doing business too." She scoffed, folding her arms. "Oh yeah? You think this little stunt is going to scare me?" I finally looked her dead in the eye. "Not scare you. Stop you." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "You don't have the stomach for this." I met her stare and felt something quiet but unmovable lock into place. "I'm doing business," I said, slow and clear, the kind that follows the law. For a second, just one, the noise dropped out of the room. And in that silence I saw it on her face. The moment she realized I wasn't flinching anymore. She didn't come at me with an apology. She came with papers. I was at the hospital when the process server found me. Neutral voice, practiced hands, An envelope thick enough to feel like a threat. Civil complaint. Essex County. Seraphine Nash versus Odellis Nash. She was accusing me of a fraudulent transfer, illegal occupancy, demanding an emergency injunction to freeze every dollar tied to the building. Rent, diet, maintenance funds. The money keeping my lights on and my son alive. It was classic Seraphine, scorched earth dressed up as procedure. I didn't panic. I went numb for about 10 seconds, then something inside me clicked into place. I stepped into the hallway, leaned my shoulder against the cool tile, and made calls. Not dramatic ones. Precise ones. Maya first, my voice steady, facts only. Then my old paralegal friend from community college, who still knew how to read filings like x-rays. A tenant rights attorney I'd met at a Newark forum, the kind who didn't blink at bullies in suits. I wasn't building an army. I was building a firewall. By nightfall, my dining table was covered in folders, inspection reports, timestamps, emails Seraphine had forgotten she ever sent. We mapped timelines, flagged inconsistencies, circled lies in red ink. Every claim she made created a trail, and trails can be followed both ways. She wanted to freeze me out, starve me into backing down. Instead, I locked everything down. Accounts documented, authority clarified, evidence duplicated and stored in 3 places. Quietly. Methodically. By midnight, Maya looked up from her laptop and said, "She thinks you're alone." I wasn't. And for the first time since this started, I slept, knowing that whatever she threw next, it wouldn't burn through what I'd built. Maya didn't soften it when she called me back into her office. She shut the door, pulled the blinds halfway down, and spread the files across the table like she was laying out evidence on a crime show. "This isn't just mismanagement," she said. "It's criminal." She walked me through it slowly, making sure I understood every piece. Shell companies with clean-looking names and fake addresses. Repair invoices billed to units that hadn't been occupied in years. Building funds routed into a personal account under my sister's maiden name. I remember staring at one spreadsheet, watching the numbers blur, realizing she'd raised my rent while siphoning the money out the back door. Then, Maya turned the page. "That signature," she said, tapping the paper, "isn't yours." I leaned in. It was my name, but wrong. Too stiff. The curves unfamiliar. A forensic review confirmed it. My signature had been forged to authorize withdrawals, leases, even legal filings. My sister hadn't just erased me emotionally. She tried to erase me on paper. I felt cold, but not weak. Cold the way you get right before you make a decision that can't be undone. That night, I met Lisa Fenton at a small cafe near Broad Street. The kind with chipped mugs and a bulletin board full of community flyers. I slid the folder across the table. Deeds. Bank records. Emails. Forensic reports. "This is insurance," I told her. "If anything happens to me or my son, this goes public." Lisa didn't dramatize it. She just nodded, already reading, her jaw tightening line by line. "You know this will blow back hard," she said. "I know," I replied. But silence already cost me enough. When I walked out into the Newark night, the air felt sharper. Cleaner, somehow. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was making sure the truth had somewhere safe to land. When Seraphine crossed the final line and tried to take Malik from me, the world went quiet in a way that felt dangerous. Not loud, not chaotic. Just that hollow silence before something breaks. She filed for emergency custody, painting me as unstable, unfit, a woman unraveling under pressure. I stood in family court with my hands steady and my chest burning, holding a folder thick with truth. The judge listened. So did the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I laid out the facts. The rent hike while my son was on a ventilator. The forged signatures. The emails where she called my child leverage. When my lawyer slid my father's documents across the bench, the air shifted. The deed, fully notarized, dated before he died. And then the letter, his handwriting unmistakable. This place is yours. Not for power. For truth. Memory. For Malik. The petition was denied. Full stop. The judge granted me emergency protection and ordered a financial investigation that cracked everything wide open. Within weeks, Seraphine's accounts were frozen. She was ordered to repay hundreds of thousands she'd siphoned from tenants who trusted her. The LLC unraveled. So did her story. What surprised me most wasn't the fall, it was the quiet rebuilding. The building changed. Heat that actually worked. Fresh paint in the hallways. Seniors stopped flinching when mail arrived. Someone started a community board by the elevator. Life came back in small, stubborn ways. One afternoon, Malik stood beside me on the balcony and asked, "Mom, this is really ours, right?" I smiled, because, for the first time, the answer felt solid in my bones. It always was. By the time the court stamped her petition denied, I felt my lungs remember how to work. Seraphine's threats turned into paperwork, then into consequences, frozen accounts, repayment orders, investigators asking questions she couldn't charm away. Back at the building, the heat finally stayed on. The hallway lights stopped flickering like they were afraid. Neighbors spoke to each other again. One evening, Malik leaned against my side on the balcony and whispered, "Mom, we're safe now." I kissed his forehead. "Yeah, baby, we are." Message: don't beg for a place you've earned, claim it, document it, protect your peace.